very excited and want to talk about our successes, especially what we have done with some of the engagements, especially with Agile Transformation. And let me ask you guys, how many of you are involved in Agile Transformation? Raise your hand. All of you.
Most of them.
Most of you. So let me ask you another question. How many of you think your Agile Transformation is not going well?
Not going?
Not going well. So nothing wrong with that. I mean, I won't call them failures, but I would rather call them as learnings. And every transformation, everyone has an opportunity to learn. And we also learn quite a bit with that. So we will cover a lot of do's and don'ts. You will see Kishore talking about plays and penalties in reference to a sports analogy, but we'll definitely try to do our best to talk about what are those pitfalls you'll normally face in an Agile transformation. We will cover this in 5 topics. First, we'll do the introduction, of course, the speaker introduction, and then we'll talk about what are those Agile engagement from a context perspective. What do you look for? For example, for Agile, we have this Agile manifesto, right? Similarly, from an Agile client engagement perspective, what is that you need to look for, and what are those which you need to pay a lot of attention on? And we'll also do elaborate discussion on success stories. Is this clear? Yes. We'll do a lot of discussion of success stories, especially with one of Xavier's client. And also we pull a lot of our learnings from different clients over the last 10-15 years as well. And then we'll also do that do's and don'ts, or otherwise we call it as plays and penalties from our Agile success stories there. And then finally we'll open it for questions and answers. Speaker introduction. Kishore and I have been in this space for the last 20 years. And we have done a lot of Agile transformation in different industries, right from the federal government, from the commercial sector. We have also kind of done a lot of big Fortune 100 transformations, especially with banks, financial institutions, and also airlines and healthcare and many other clients. We picked few of them for doing it as an example in this session. We also authored quite a few books, which I put in here. The one which was quite successful was Agile Ecosystem. And this is how do you get it right? And this Agile Ecosystem is quite popular, and we have over 100 comments on the book, very, very favorable comments. So this is definitely something which I would recommend for all of you to read. Then we also released another book called Agile Playbook. And the Agile Playbook is from a context of from a sports context, what are those plays and penalties or do's and don'ts? It is very clearly elaborated for different roles of anybody who's working through an Agile transformation. So going on from there, Kishore, you want to cover?
All right. So Agile Engagement. So as you all said, they're all in some fashion, Scrum Masters, coaches, consultants. So we go to a client, be it a bank or anything, right? So when we go there, first thing is, what is the customer expecting us to do? We are there to do some job. What does the customer is expecting us to do, and what we, the Agile consultants, are expected to deliver there. So that is the context of this. And then, typically, as Ram was mentioning, some of the things you must do to be successful, and some of the things you should avoid, the anti-values, we call them as penalties. So we're going to talk about that. So we're going to talk about based on our experience. We were very vulnerable, right? So we were not always successful. We had our share of failures also. We learned a lot. So again, as Ram mentioned, we put it in the book also. So we will talk about our success stories, and we'll talk about some of the stuff that did not go well, and we learned. And that's what we're going to talk about. Alright, so as Ram was mentioning, when we talk about engagement, you are a consultant, you go to a client place. So when you go to a client place and when you engage a customer, So there is an expectation. So when there is an expectation, we came up with this manifesto, right? Similar to the Agile manifesto. So being Agile over doing Agile. What is the difference? What does it mean by doing Agile? Being Agile, we're going to talk about that. And measuring adapting over Agile competency. Oh, we have been doing Agile for 3 years. We have been doing Agile for 3 years. Okay, so what? Are you able to deliver the business value you originally intended to deliver? Are you truly measuring your Agile success? Are you really learning and adapting? Or, oh, we have been doing for 3 years, we are good. So that's the Agile competency. We'll talk about that. And listening to customer needs than prescribing Agile. Okay, I'm an Agile coach now. So starting tomorrow, we'll do sprints. 2-week sprints. We'll do day 1 this, day 10 this, every day we'll do this, or we have these ceremonies, or we'll have these artifacts. That is prescribing Agile. Or are you really listening to the customer? What does the customer need? Anybody can go there, read a book, and prescribe Agile there. But do you understand customer requirements? So do you understand the customer's needs? We'll talk about that. And then, well, I was there for 3 years in this back. We implemented, so we built up 8 Agile teams. And we are doing this for 10 years, and everything is good. I'm going now. Yeah, that is just implementing Agile. But doing so, did you solve the customer problem? Did you make the customer life better? So did you deliver the business value the customer was expecting? Or you just went there, implemented Agile as prescribed in a book, you came home. We'll talk about it. So that is the context for our discussion here. It's a deeply rooted, which is very close to our hearts. We have been doing this for a long time. Again, as I said, we did do some mistakes. We were not always successful, but we learned a lot. And that's the result in our books and Thank you.
So these success stories we pulled out from various, microcosm of different industries you would see. The typical ones is financial services, because I thought most of the transformation happens in these industries. So we took some of the examples from there, some of the success stories, some of those learnings from there. So it's financial services companies, leading banks, the airline, one airline company as well, and also a healthcare company too. The first one, financial services company, is an existing client of ZBR today. And there are some live examples taken from that as well. Irrespective of the clients, we see the problems, there's some consistencies there. So if you can understand and solve, like Kishore said, business problems, then you can replicate that in other companies as well. The engagement model, we thought there are 5 steps. If you can do this consistently, you will be able to address most of the transformational challenges in any organization. And these 5 steps are very straightforward from a coaching perspective. First, you have to interview the client, especially empathy interviews. That is what I've seen. There's a lot of value and benefit. And these empathy interviews will give the perspective of how this transformation is going, especially with the current state where they are, and also talking to all the specialists in the Agile teams, Scrum Master, Product Owner. This technically is called SELs. All these guys, when you talk with them, you will get a perspective. Architects, DevOps, you'll get a perspective of how things are, and then you can use those responses to understand and set the current state in a much more, I would say, as a qualitative way, but at least a qualitative way. The second one is observing. Again, it doesn't have to be like when you go into an organization for transformational engagement, you will come across multiple teams. These teams could be anywhere from 10 to 50. It is practically impossible to be in all the teams. So, but if you can take a cross-section of teams, that will be beneficial as well. it could be the practice they do, it could be the ceremonies, it could be even the Jira projects they set up. The data tells you a lot of things. So we go into that in detail as well. Third, assessing. Assessments are usually conducted by any coach in any organization when they go in. What is the problem with assessments? They typically take a long time. Long time, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, maybe longer. Is the client patient enough to wait till that time? So my suggestion is pick the key core competencies which will be very much applicable to that client and use that to do some sort of a leadership assessment. So I'll give an example also on how we conducted that. Then, of course, understanding and setting up the gap analysis, trying to set up a roadmap of improvement items, or even those backlog items, which can be, they all say, right, we should eat our own cooking, which means that we need to set up a backlog of improvement items, probably in whatever ALM tools they are using, Jira or Rally. But if you set it up in such a way that you can show consistent progress, showing that needle moving towards the right, to the client regularly, that is a huge value add for anyone. Finally, reporting. Having that cadence with the client regularly, every week, trying to give them the update of what happened since in the last week and what you're planning to do next week and how that is aligning to the overall roadmap. That will give you a perspective because transformation engagements are usually expensive. There's a lot of investment that the organizations invest on transformation, and to justify that investment, it is very important to show how the transformation is progressing from an agile implementation perspective, and again, focusing more on the value delivery at the end of the day. So we kind of identified.
How is interviewing with client and assessing and assessing?
I'll come to that. I have a slide on that. Good question. Just hold on to it. Just one moment. So we identified place and penalties. Do's and don'ts. We kind of put a sports analogy to it. Maybe you can take soccer or American football. The plays are those which are usually when you do it right, things will go very well. Penalties are those learnings and failures. So that is something which we kind of categorize that. So empathy interviews, again going back to your question, how is interviews different from assessments? Okay, interviews. This is an example of one live example which we conducted recently, an empathy interviews of collecting all those responses for multiple open-ended questions. And the questions could be something like this. The questions could be how effective the transformation is going, or even asking them what are their concerns, what are their motivation factors, what is that they are looking from outcome perspective. All those items, when they kind of respond, that will be a useful value add when you are planning to set up the improvement roadmap so that organization can move forward from that space. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
So the next step is observe. What do you do in an observe? So you are not only looking for the practices, you are also looking at any anti-patterns there, and also the data in the ALM tool like Jira or Rally. That itself is a huge indication of how well they are structured. It can give information about metrics, the boards, the dashboards, flow of data, the quality of work item. Is the acceptance criteria in the user story? Is the quality of work? Is the quality of work okay? Is set up correctly on Epic and the stories? Epic hypothesis is built correctly or not? Story is estimated properly, or even the quality practices. So there's a lot of information this can give you as well. Assessing. Again, going back to the difference between assessment and interviews. Assessing. The best way to do that is do a very quick high-level assessment by conducting it with maybe a dozen leaders. But what you do is, do not keep it too elaborative, but rather focus on very key competencies. And these key competencies can be very helpful for you to understand the patterns and also document in such a way that you can see, where the organization is heading towards. You can tabulate it. You can use some sort of a spider graphs. I think most of you do that, especially when you're doing an assessment, and also draw some interesting conclusions from that as well. So this is also another example which we pulled from a recent engagement we conducted. And again, the thing is not to get bogged down with a lot of information on this slide, but the key thing what to understand is the numbers what you have on a scale of 1 to 5. What does that mean from the organizational perspective? What is that learnings you have? What is that improvements you can do from the level you are in today? And how that is affecting your organization? The 3 competencies we picked up is, in the organization we call it as cross commits. What it means is the cross-team dependencies. How efficiently are we managing that? The second one is about complexity reduction. Again, if the teams are self-organizing, like Harihara said, right, self-organizing teams. But if the self-organizing teams are dependent on each other because they don't have the skill set needed in that team, are they looking beyond that and trying to bring that T-shaped skill set into the team? The third one is ability to measure. Again, is your measurement transparent enough, or is your measurement useful where the decisions are driving the actions what you're taking in that organization? So those things were very useful for this organization, and it really helped them to level set where they want to go to.
I have a question. Does these competencies change with different clients or vendors that you work with?
Absolutely.
Based on the problem statement that they got?
That is the reason why that empathy interviews are very useful. Because when you have the empathy interviews, you will be asking them the questions, especially what is that they are very concerned with. What is that it is keeping them up at night, or if something is not working, or if something is coming in the way of the value delivery, at least you'll be able to identify those competencies and rearrange whichever way the organization wants to benefit from. Make sense?
Yes. Thanks.
Good question. So the next step is advising. What do you advise? Again, this advising should be very useful from the client perspective. They have invested a lot of dollars on you, right? So it is important to show them the accomplishments, learnings in a weekly basis on a good cadence. Because I remember some of those assessment meetings, or I call it as weekly report out, I go there it's a 1 hour meeting, and for 45 minutes I don't get a chance to talk. It is completely okay, because one of those biggest quality or traits of a good coach is having that ability to listen. Because if you cannot connect with the client, then you are deviating the path completely, and the client will lose interest in that engagement itself. Providing roadmaps. Very, very essential. I have a few examples to show you. Identifying the key competencies and also providing a gap analysis. Gap analysis in the form of any key findings, and also coming up with some conclusions and how we have to plan these improvement items as well. This is in Agile 2.0, I just mentioned it there because this is in one of the outcomes we produced. This is nothing but telling them what is the next level of agility. And in the next level of agility, you can clearly see that this team is doing well on the team and technical agility. But what is happening is they do not have a path forward beyond that. What do you do to make them more work as a cross-team dependent team or cross-team functional team, where they can work towards as a team of teams, where they can do what is in a safe terminology they call it as peer planning. But what it does to the team is it gives them a big visibility for what's happening, be much beyond the 2-week sprint, so that they have a bigger visibility, they have a better way of identifying dependencies, and the intent is again what they do not have from the perspective of standardization or prioritization or intake process, anything that is applicable from an organization perspective.
So Ram, I have a question, and it's a very general question for almost all Agile coaches and Scrum Masters. Whenever we approach the organization, the client, with all the steps that you talked about, do we need to also mention the SLAs or the time when we take it step 1 and step 2? The reason being is they expect everything from me that I should start delivering the results from the next day. it took like almost a week for me to do the assessment and then planning and every step that you talked about. But what their expectation is, whenever everything is in their hand, they will start. They're expecting that I should giving the results from the very next, or maybe from the very next sprint.
That's spot on. I mean, clients do expect faster results, and they cannot wait multiple months to see results. So we need to figure out what is that expectation and frequency, and feed the information as it becomes available. Again, trying to keep that focus and delivery cadence so that client can expect and also understand how the deliverables are coming to he or she. But more importantly, they need to understand, is the transformation moving towards the right? Are you able to deliver what you have promised? So having that
I can only gauge after a certain point of time that it's going on the right direction or not, but not on the very third day or the fourth day.
Absolutely, and that's very fair. But even the client understands that. But if the client understands the path forward to get to that improvements at the next number of days, I think that is a win situation.
It also depends on the maturity or some maturity level of the organization as well. Sometimes most of the guys you will find that they are just new to the system, or they are 1 or 2 years old in the system, and their level of Scrum is not that mature that I'm expecting being a Scrum Master or an Agile coach. But still, they want us that within the next 2 weeks we will start seeing the results. These kind of dilemmas. It's a very general question that we
Absolutely. I mean, what you said is normally what the client expects. But once, again, keeping the client in the dark for a longer period of time is also a problem. It's better to show them the results very quickly. For example, producing the improvements roadmap. That's very quick. You can identify and at least give them what does the improvement roadmap do. It gives you the temporal reference. It tells you what you're doing by month, and it tells you what you're doing from various competencies also. So, at the minimum, you can produce this. That can be a value add to the client. Make sense? Again, didn't want to overload with a lot of information here, but the key takeaways from this slide is, again, putting it in such a way that it is easy to comprehend the roadmap and also able to explain it or articulate it clearly to the client. Gaps. Again, trying to give the current state. So, for example, if you do not know the current state, you cannot understand where you want to move forward with. So, identifying the current state is very important. And again, you're trying to give them. Again, this is an example also. You have to tell them, what they are good at, what are the gaps they have, and what is the path forward for them to move towards that next level of maturity. Here you can see that there is a mention about AI planning, there's a mention about advanced roadmaps, there's a mention about agility health for maturity assessment. You can also see some standardization and best practices too. Again, what I'm showing there is not rocket science. It is again a standard practices a lot of organizations do. But if you can lay it out in a way and articulate in a way that the client understands, I think that will be the most impactful for the client.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Do you want to add more light on agility health? According to you, what does that mean?
So agility health is a maturity assessment tool. It's a cloud-based tool, very popular tool.
Is it a freeware?
No, it's not a freeware. It's Sally Eletta is the one who founded this. It's called Agility Health Radars. So you can just figure it out on Google. It is there. Yeah, it's at cost. It's not. And very useful tool as well. The report outs usually showing the improvement roadmaps. You are talking about the improvement backlog. Again, we want to show it the way we tell all the other teams how they have to follow. Read out cadence regularly done, and also showing that improvements, no matter how small it is, showing the improvements regularly is a quite important step. Adding trainings to that, coaching and mentoring, active coaching wherever possible, and more importantly, again putting this whole perspective in one slider. It will be something like this, where you have interviews with empathy interviews which conducted
with the stakeholders, and this is collected and then they are represented in such a way that you can get to that. Observe is the next step. And while you are doing the observe, you are looking at activities the teams are doing, the ceremonies, the deliverables, customer integration, and also making sure that you review the ALM tools such as Jira or Rally so that artifacts can be evaluated thoroughly. Assessing, again, we talked about maturity assessments. On a scale of 1 to 5, how the teams are functioning on those key competencies what we identified. Advising is again trying to look at how the teams are performing and what gaps they have, and eventually how we are setting up the next steps, especially for the roadmaps and the growth backlog, and finally the reporting the findings back to the client itself. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
So can you shed some light on
Active coaching. So
We didn't hear the question.
the question is coaching. How do you coach? When you are at a client side. Active coaching could be when you are part of a team, observing the ceremonies. You see an pattern, you coach, right? Or you are looking at the Jira where the story has an acceptance criteria written very poorly. That's a coaching. Anything which can help the teams to move on. Make sense?
There was another question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, my question was regarding the roadmap that you were showing. So, I saw that you had definite dates, September, October, November, like that.
Those are notional dates. They're not definite dates. Notional dates.
Notional, anyway, definite dates means that means you are setting the expectations to the client that you will complete this by this date, you will complete that. But in reality, does it happen every time?
Again, as you were mentioning,
Some of the,
it depends on the maturity of the organization. If the organization is already mature, so those are all the tangible milestones we can hit. But if I go into a green organization, they have no clue how to spell Agile, then that roadmap does not apply.
So in
That
case,
roadmap is a sample from one of the plans.
Yeah. So in that case, you will have a different roadmap. You say.
Absolutely, that's well said. Because it depends, like Kishore said, it depends on the organization itself. And based on what it fits them, that is how you will be building the roadmap.
But when you are bringing agile transformation, that is
It is not the same. It's not a cookie cutter. It depends on the client, depends on the conditions, depends on the problems, depends on the maturity of the organization, depends on their culture.
and even if you are agile transformation, like suppose you are in an organization where, say you are doing you will be ultimately transforming a whole team of say 150 people. Might be like 3-4 teams are going good. One art is falling back.
Absolutely.
In that case, you cannot bring it into the same environment, right? So,
They will be at a different levels.
so there will be some
And just you'll have a different roadmap. Absolutely. It's a good point. Good question, answer.
Maybe you had a question.
So, through this, I realize that assessments, right? When you're doing agile transformations, as an agile coach, assessments are one way of understanding whether transformation has been successful or not. But it's a very quantifiable approach. Right? It's quantifiable, it's measured, which is what we like measure. But as an agile practitioner, what is that one marker other than your assessments? Though I know that is one of the core things that we're talking about. Other than your assessments, what is that one marker that tells you that your transformation has been successful? If I look at it from a qualitative perspective rather than a quantitative perspective.
Would you mind holding on to the thought because there is one slide coming?
Absolutely.
Alright, any other questions on the place before we get into the bad habits? Yes.
one of the results I saw was plan for next week. Right? I'm surprised to see I hear that in many other also. There is a sprint which is of 2 weeks, you have already planned something. What significant you can plan for the next week? And what do you do? What can any team
next week is just a mention what worked in that organization. It can be next sprint also, it could be next month also. It depends on the organization.
For example, if you are planning for a year plan, so you have a date set. So you should definitely do something in preparation for the year planning in next week. Maybe come up with some good features, come up with some vision, come up with the adjustment to the roadmaps, come up with some high-level user stories. So you can still do some tangible artifacts or work items before that next week hits. The next week is again this emotional thing, right? For that particular client, at that particular time.
Plan for the next week is to plan for the future.
Yeah, plan for
Not for exactly what they're doing next week.
I mean, for that client it was next week, but for a different client it could be a period, a notional period, like Kishore said, whatever applicable to that client.
Because I've seen man is also pretty much wrong there. What focus can you say? What are they achieving?
It's not the next week.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the
It is sometime in the future.
Good question, very good question.
Sorry to interrupt one last question.
Please.
I'm working as a sales scrum master, just giving the background. So the project that I'm working for, the developers were not taken into concept. The features were jotted for all 6 sprints and they were shared with the business team. However, developers were onboarded after the peer planning was done. Now we are behind by 4 sprints. Entire 1 month has gone and getting access to the team. Now we are behind by our plan, which was shared initially in the PRP. Now the business expectation is that we have to deliver MVP, at least MVP by December end. So which is not at all doable. What I should be doing in this scenario? The developers were not even taken into concept and the commitment was shared with the business team.
Again, it's a little bit contextual, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you talk about features, developers may not be actively present. So features are at the program level. So you have product managers, system architects, business owners, and everybody else. The product owners may be in tune to what is happening at the feature level. But when those features are broken down into user stories, so that's when developers come into picture. So I don't have to sit with every developer in the room to come up with the features. I'm a product manager. But I do work with my product owner at the team level. The product owner in turn will talk to the teams. Hey, this is what is coming down the pipeline. Alright? So, but we estimate the features at the high level and project it accordingly.
But now just to reframe my question, we are behind by the deadlines. How do we handle this scenario?
Let me pitch in, sorry. So these guys are talking about their experience in a transformation, and your question is coming from your experience of a transformation. So there has to be a lot of contextualization to what you're asking, and the answer cannot be given like this. So please,
I cannot give a solution
later on,
and then it may not even work. Man, that guy told me this and I implemented this. Nothing works here. That guy is an idiot.
So let's look at the experience these guys are sharing and ask your question in a different forum.
And
Get
generally,
connected with the coaches
in a
here.
situation which is not in a management state, irrespective of waterfall or other whatever it is, it's either highlighted as a risk or an issue, and the visibility is brought to the leadership team who will have to take a decision going forward. So that's been that.
The answers are generally not like ABCD. There is no
exactly.
specific set of rules to be done. So a discussion needs to be done, which you can do later. But let's look at the
Maybe
general
after
expectations.
this discussion we can chat and we'll talk about some possible solutions.
Alright, so we are a little behind, so 8 minutes is there. So please ask the questions anytime, no problem. Let's talk about the bad habits first. So far, he's been a good boy, right? Ram is always good. So he's talking about all the good things. So let me be the bad cop here. So we will talk about some of the bad things that can happen and have habits. So in a sports analogy, if you're following the script, if you're following good habits in a game, more than likely the team is going to win. But if you are messing up everything, if you all these bad habits that you have, fumbles happen, everything else, those are the penalties. So if you have more penalties, more than likely you are going to lose. So some of the high-level penalties are like this. Doing agile versus being agile. So there's a subtle difference between doing Agile and being Agile. So, the wise man, there is a wise man, said that Agile is not what you do, Agile is what you are. There is nothing to do in Agile. We all know Agile is a bunch of value statements, bunch of principles. There is nothing to do in Agile. Don't go and ask your friend, hey, do you do Agile? There is nothing to do in Agile. Agile is the way you live, right? So ask yourself a question. As a person, am I Agile? So when I close my eyes and somebody asks me, individuals, interaction and process tool, which one will you pick? I'll pick individuals. But then you are Agile already. Alright? So there is a big documentation is needed, and then your working software is there. Which one do you prefer? We prefer working software. You are Agile already. So there is nothing to do in Agile. So ask yourself, are you Agile? Are you being Agile? Don't do Agile. There is nothing to do in Agile. So that is the biggest mistake we consultants do. Right? I think somebody was asking, running after quick results. I'm an executive flying first class. I look at something and oh, there is something called safe. Okay, Monday morning, 9 o'clock, all hands. Guys, I read something about scaled Agile framework. Okay, 6 months, show me the results. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Transformation is not change. How long does the transformation take? Anyone? Forever. Yeah. It may not even happen. So we were kicked out of some of the organizations. We don't need you here. Because what we were saying was not okay for them. So transformation is transformation only if your own self is unrecognizable. Butterfly becoming, what is that? Caterpillar. Caterpillar becoming butterfly is a transformation. So no matter what butterfly thinks, she cannot become a caterpillar again. So you have to forget yourself. You have to undo a lot of things to become transformed. So when the quantitative changes are what you do. I do daily stand-up. I do sprint planning. I do system demos. If these practices held for a long time, that becomes your habit. So when this quantitative changes becomes your qualitative changes. So I want to get fit. Somebody told me I should run every day. I put an alarm, practice. I put my shoes, I finish my bathroom, I start running. I do that 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 6 days, 6 months I do it. After that I don't need alarm. Those quantitative changes I was trying to do to be fit became my qualitative changes. So that's when the transformation happens. Transformation does not happen overnight. Don't set the wrong expectations with us. Alright? Speaking Agile Mumbo Jumbo. As soon as I go there, oh well, we'll do sprint. Right? Okay, we'll do Agile. Or you're a Scrum Master. Or you're a product owner. Customer is thinking, what is this sprint? What is this Scrum? No, don't talk to me about all this Mumbo Jumbo. Right? Tell me, talk to me, understand my problems, understand my pain points. My problem is shorter time to market. Talk to me about that. Don't talk to me about Agile. Don't talk to me about sprint. I don't care. Agile, no Agile, I don't care. Give me the business results. So your focus should be talking to the language of the customer understands. Talk to the customer, understand the pain points. Don't talk about Agile. They don't care. They simply don't care. Run after Agile ceremonies. Again, Peter Drucker says, if you want something new, you have to start doing something more. If you continue to do, it's not working, you know that. It is not working. By just doing it again and again, expecting it to change, not going to happen. Not going to happen. So don't, oh, we have been doing for 2 years, let us try 1 more year. Huh? It will work. No, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. So don't just simply do ceremonies and expect it to happen. Change your mindset. Change your mindset. It's not going to happen. Focus on the principles and mindset. What is the difference between the principle and the practice? Anyone?
Principle is just a concept.
Any other perspective? He's right. Any other perspective here?
Principles are generally unchanging.
Okay, I'll give you a simple example. Right? Real life. Prescriptive. Practices are prescriptive.
No, I said principles are prescriptive. Practice is actually execution.
Practices
Principally, I should be fit. Principally, I should be fit. Whereas practice is the activities which I do to get the principle, to achieve the principle.
Awesome. Yes.
Principle, if something, if it is practiced,
Awesome. Yes.
Principle is on the book, but practice is on the ground.
Awesome. Everybody's right. Everybody's right. I'll give you a simple example. I have a teenage boy. He's driving car. So whenever he leaves the house, I live in Washington DC metro area. 3 to 4 months it snows, rest of the time it's good. So when he's leaving the house every day, I tell him, drive safely, drive carefully. During the snow, in the month of January, February, the roads are not clear, its visibility is zero. The posted speed says 50 miles per hour. He goes at 20, 25. He's adjusting to the road conditions. But in the summer months, same person, same car, same road, same posted speed. But he goes at 50, 60. He's adjusting to the road conditions. Driving safely is a principle. Adjusting the speed to the road condition to drive safely is a practice. Practices are context dependent. I go here, implement certain practices. I become a superhero. I bring the same practices here, I might miserably fail. Because the context is different, people are different, culture is different. So practices that work somewhere else may or may not work. Principles always work. Principles are the why, and practices are what you do. So there is, for everything, let's say daily stand. Why should I do daily stand? I don't want to do it. System demo, I don't want to do it. So those are all the practices. For every practice, there is a reason behind it. The why. Why is the principle? So focus on the principles. Do not focus on the practices. Practices can be okay. It's okay to people. So people do practices, they expect the results. Doesn't happen. To change the culture. Yeah, I'm an agile coach. I go to the organization. I think your organization culture is very bad. Let us come up with a very good strategy. We'll change the culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker says. No matter what kind of strategy you have, if the culture is not changing, nothing is going to happen. So do not focus on beautiful looking strategy. Nothing is going to happen. Try to change the culture. To change the culture, you need to change the entire organization. Alright? Finally, do not ignore resistance. I go there, I think you were saying 3 months, 6 months. It doesn't happen. 30 years, I've been doing my job one day, and this guy comes, quote unquote, agile coach. He asked me to write user stories, he's asked me to write acceptance rated, GWT. Oh, what should I do all that? And if I don't do that, they are going to penalize me. Fear, resistance. Fear and resistance is there. Do not ignore. Do not ignore. That is very, very important. Do not assume, oh, I have leadership buy-in, you start doing daily stand-ups tomorrow. It's not going to work. So how do we do that? Empathize with them. Understand why this person is resisting. Maybe fear. Losing a job, don't have the right skills, don't have right training. So focus on that. Empathy. Help that person come out of their fear. Okay, let's partner with them. Okay, you don't know how to write user story, that's okay. I'm here to help you. Let us win together. I'm not the person telling you what to do. We are doing together. We are going to win as a team. It's not you, me anymore. Agile coach is never the person who's telling. Agile coach is a person who is making others win. Coaches never play. Coaches are always on the sidelines. Dravid wants to play yesterday when they were playing with England, but he couldn't. Wall doesn't mean anything. Coaches does not play, so let them play. You be on the sidelines. Empathize with them. Understand. People have fear and resistance. Much more there. There are a bunch of anti-patterns in this book. Entire book is filled with anti-patterns. So, but in the interest of the time, we will only do so.